Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Pequignet Concorde. This watch is available from pequignet.com for €4,000. The Concorde is available in 40mm and 36mm versions. This is the 40, and it's also available in a plethora of dial colour options. Of the dial colour options, I think this charcoal grey version is the best looking. Pequignet have a rich brand heritage. They make their watches in Morteau in France, and they've been making watches since 1973. In 2023, to celebrate their 50th anniversary, they released this piece, the Concorde, at Watches and Wonders. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a substantial watch box, which is protected by this white cardboard outer sleeve you remove, and inside you have a cardboard watch box. So one removes the lid, which is a snug fit. And inside we have the watch box itself. You pull down the flap and remove the watch box. So nicely finished in white vinyl with stitching around the perimeter of the lid, Pequignet branded to the lid, and on the front we have Manufacture Francais, because Pequignet watches and also their in-house calibers are manufactured in Morteau in France, and also the brand emblem. Hinge lid, which is spring loaded. And the interior has a contrasting grey velour fabric, which is finished to a good standard, and also contrasting orange fabric to the cutouts in the base. So in the left-hand cutout, we have a white vinyl travel case, which is embossed with Pequignet, stitched around the perimeter to a good standard, magnetic stainless steel popper, which attracts the flap, and I'll show you the cushion that the watch sits on. Upholstered to a good standard with contrasting grey and orange velour fabric, so good quality finishing, and nice to get a travel case included because it's very practical and useful. And the watch sits in transit on a grey velour fabric upholstered cushion, as you can see, and that does a good job of protecting the watch from moving around in transit. Now in the centre section we have a stainless steel plate which is brushed satin finished and branded with Pequignet, and on the reverse we have a QR code. This is the warranty card, and it's the first time I've seen a stainless steel plate used for the warranty card with a QR code. This is innovative. Rather than using an owner's instruction manual and a warranty booklet or leaflet, Pequignet have been innovative and they use this stainless steel plate which has the serial number of the piece engraved, and this matches the engraved serial number on the Caseback of the Concorde. Each Concorde has a unique serial number. So you can use your iPhone or Android to scan the QR code, and that will download the warranty information and also the owner's instruction manual for the Concorde. So I like it. It's aesthetically pleasing but also innovative. Now, Pequignet also gifted me very kindly 2 gifts. These Pequignet branded white gloves, which also have Manufacture Francais and the Pequignet emblem, and also a Pequignet catalogue for 2024. So on the first page we have an introduction and message from the CEO of Pequignet, Hugh Supari, and we also have high definition pictures of the movements and also every single Pequignet piece. There's also pictures of their watchmakers, and there's a map of France which shows where Pequignet manufacture their watches and movements. So they're in Morteau, which is on the border of Switzerland and France. And inside we also have, on the next page I'll show you, a history of Pequignet. So as I've detailed, they've been making watches since 1973 in France, and it details the full history of Pequignet to the present day. So in 2023 they celebrated their 50th anniversary and released the Concorde at Watches and Wonders. Exploded diagrams of the movements and also high definition pictures of all the plethora of dial colour options for the Concorde. It's available in 40 and 36 as I've detailed, and beautiful high definition pictures, absolutely gorgeous. So they've got a very broad collection because they have daily wear pieces, dive pieces and also dress pieces, both for men and women. And also their movements are all in-house. They make their watches and their movements in Morteau in France. From 2011 onwards they became a manufacturer, and what that means is they began to manufacture their movements in-house rather than buying in movements from Sellita or ETA as many mid-tier brands do. So if you look at this caliber initial which is used in the Concorde, absolutely beautiful high definition picture of it because we can see the arabesque finishing, the pelage finishing and the cutouts in the rotor which is signed with the brand emblem. So very interesting catalogue, and one can peruse all the available pieces as well as the strap options which are just numerous. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 40mm case diameter. We have a 46.3mm lug-to-lug measurement, a thickness of 9.5mm, and the integrated bracelet tapers from 21.8mm at the integrated lugs down to 18.9mm at the 2-button push butterfly clasp. And as you can see, the butterfly clasp is signed to a high standard with the Pequignet emblem engraved in high definition engraving. Nice light resistance to the 2-button push spring-loaded triggers, which open the 2 halves of the butterfly clasp, flawless mirror polishing to the 316L grade stainless steel. It is a handed clasp, so you have to close the left hand portion first and then the right hand portion overlaps with the clasp, which is signed. Flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and you can see the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished applied stick indices and the skeletonized handset, which is also mirror polished to a flawless standard. The handset is correctly proportioned. If you look at the skeletonized minute hand, you can see the tip of it extends all the way to the white minute ticks on the chapter ring. And if you look at the hour hand, which is also skeletonized, you can see it extends all the way to the stick indices. The second hand is also the correct length because the tip of it extends to the white chapter ring. And I like the minute ticks, they're clearly legible. The Pequignet brand logo is printed in high definition printing. The font is nice and fine and therefore the legibility is outstanding, and it's 6 o'clock in a very fine fonts. We have manufacture français because the watch and the in-house calibre used, the calibre initial, are both made in-house in Morteau in France. Date complication at 3 is correctly proportioned, and they've made the correct decision by using a black date wheel with contrasting white Arabic numerals rather than using a white date wheel with black Arabic numerals. Legibility is good. Now, the benefits of this being a very low profile and slender piece at only 9.5mm thick is it has a very low profile rehort. This is one of the thinnest rehorts I have seen on a watch. It is incredibly low profile and slim, and that means the flat sapphire crystal can sit very close to the dial and also the date complication, so one doesn't get the usual shadow of a date being too deep, too far away from the sapphire crystal and the dial because of the shallow rehort. And this is the benefit of using their own in-house calibre, the calibre initial, rather than using a movement from ETA or Sellita, because that would mean a taller cannon pinion stack height for the handset and therefore a thicker rehort being needed to give adequate clearance to the second hand so it doesn't foul the underside of the sapphire crystal. So very low profile movements, very low profile rehort, perfectly flat sapphire crystal which is very close to the handset. So when you look at the piece straight on, it looks like the sapphire crystal is invisible, and therefore the legibility, the clarity is outstanding. So I like the legibility of it. The stick indices contrast very well with the anthracite finish to the vertical satin finishing of the charcoal grey dial. So the dial has a metallic finish to it, but it's not sunburst and it's not reflective like a glossy black dial, which is enamel. It's got a slight sheen to it, which is vertical, and the vertical satin finishing to the charcoal grey dial catches the light. It's very subtle, and in low light conditions the dial almost looks black. It looks very dark charcoal grey, but in direct light it becomes more reflective and shiny and more like an anthracite colour of grey. So it's just beautiful. So I like the white contrasting printing, and I also like the black data with white Arabic numerals. Legibility is very strong. The tips of the skeletonized handset are loomed with TC1 blue Superluminova, which we'll test in the loom test. The knurled crown is solid 316L grade stainless steel, and it's signed with an embossed Pequignet emblem, as you can see, to a high standard, and correctly proportioned for a daily wear piece. It's grippy and tactile, but without being too large. It doesn't dig into the back of the hand and wrist when you flex the wrist. Often with crowns, if they're too large on a 40mm head of the piece, the crown will actually protrude too far from the right hand flank of the case and then dig into the back of your hand. But this is correctly proportioned, no sharp edges to it. It's been chamfered and deburred to the highest of standards, and the knurling is very tactile and grippy, so one can easily get good purchase on it. So let's test the push-pull crown execution. So, as it's a push-pull crown rather than a screw-down crown, in the closed position, which provides 100 meters of hermetic seal, we can manually wind the caliber initial to its maximum 65-hour power reserve. So just think about that for a moment. This has 65 hours, nearly 5 days of power reserve, but it's only 9.5 millimeters thick. Usually with high power reserve watches that have 5 days of power reserve, the movement needs to be very thick, and therefore they are often in excess of 13 millimeters thick. This is only 9.5, below 10 millimeters thick, but has 65 hours, which is just incredible. So one can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up in the caliber initial. Nice firm resistance to the manual winding. It feels very smooth, but one can feel the tension building up. And if you give it a full 40 clockwise turns, that will be enough to fully charge it to its maximum 65-hour power reserve. Pulling it out to the first click position is the that's the second click. It's very delicate, just bear with me. It's difficult to do with gloves on. Right, so now first click position is the date set position. So it has a quick set complication. Rotating the crown anti-clockwise advances the quick set complication. It's got a nice light click, lighter than a Sellita SW200-1 or an ETA 2824-2, which you may be familiar with. Very smooth, absolutely silky smooth, but one can feel the indexing, it's positive. It clicks over with a nice solid click. So it's very satisfying because it feels smooth to set the date, but the clicking action of the quick set date has a very light click to it, but it's positive, and the alignment of the Arabic numerals inside the rectangular date window are perfect. Both left and right Arabic numerals align. They're not too far to the left or too far to the right. They've got the alignment absolutely correct. Pulling it out to the second click position hacks the movement. So it's possible to hack the movement and stop the second hand dead to set the time precisely to the second with the caliber initial, which is an in-house caliber. So if you look at the second hand, you can see it's now stopped dead, and I'm now in the time setting position. I'm just going to cycle it through the full 12 hours to feel how the gearing feels. Nice medium resistance to it. It doesn't feel too light or too tight, it feels smooth, but we can feel the minimal friction of the joules. It has 21 joules, so it's a low friction movement. The gearing is clearly got high tolerances because you can feel they mesh very well. Now, one thing I like about it is there's an immediate response. When you rotate the crown clockwise or anti-clockwise, the minute hand immediately moves. There's no backplay whatsoever. It doesn't have backplay as per an SW200-1 or an ETA 2824-2, for example. The caliber initial is a nice tight movement. The gearing is very solid, and we get that immediate response, so it feels like a very robust movement. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that reinstates the 100 meters of hermetic seal. And as you can see, the second hand begins to sweep around the dial once again at the characteristic 4 Hz sweep of 28,800 vibrations per hour. I really like the 4 Hz sweep. I dislike 3 Hz movements that run at 21,600 vibrations per hour because the second hand stutters or judders around the dial with a 3 Hz frequency. The benefit of a 4 Hz frequency is it's more smooth. The second hand doesn't stutter or judder, it sweeps around the dial smoothly. And I also regard 4 Hz or 28,800 vibrations per hour to be the perfect balance between power reserve and accuracy. One can extend the accuracy and also, one can extend the power reserve to 65 hours without sacrificing too much accuracy. One can still get chronometer grade accuracy from a movement. So they've made the correct choice by making the caliber initial a 4 Hz movement. So excellent movement and sublime push-pull crown execution, silky smooth to manually wind. And of course, 100 meters is perfectly acceptable with a daily wear piece. So I'll show you the caseback. Screwed down exhibition caseback. So the stainless steel portion is brushed satin finish to the centre, and that contrasts with the mirror polished edges to it, as you can see. And the flathead screws are finished to perfection. The mirror polishing and the engraving is high definition, as you can see, absolutely gorgeous. Centre section of the exhibition caseback is glazed with sapphire crystal. And they've made the correct decision by not using a solid stainless steel caseback to hide the movement, because this is a beautifully decorated caliber, and they've done the right thing by using an exhibition caseback and sapphire crystal to show it off. Just look at the gorgeous arabesque finishing to the movement, which also has pelage finishing to it, and we've also got cutouts to the rotor and the embossed Pequignet emblem, and it's just sublime. The finishing to this movement is the kind of finishing one would expect to see on a high-tip piece costing in excess of €10,000. One doesn't see arabesque finishing and pelage finishing to this level on pieces in the mid-tier €4,000 price point. Absolutely gorgeous. The finishing to the rotor itself is a work of art. The cutouts are beautifully chamfered and deburred, and the quality of the embossing is high definition. It's just an incredible in-house calibre, and the sapphire crystal is very low profile and flat. So it's only 9.5 millimeters thanks to the flat sapphire crystal in the front of the head of the piece, and just look how flat the sapphire crystal is in the exhibition caseback. It's very smooth and flat, so it feels very comfortable against the wrist, and absolutely gorgeous movement. The definition of the arabesque finishing is just incredible, and also the pelage finishing. I love the way it catches the light. So with regards to the clasp, the butterfly clasp is finished to a very high standard, flawless mirror polishing to the top side, underside, and 2 spring-loaded triggers, and no sharp edges to it, doesn't have sharp corners, and the hinge pins are nice and tight. All 4 hinge pins have good tolerances. The quality control is excellent. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now bear in mind, the butterfly clasp is handed, so you need to snap shut the left hand portion first, and the right hand portion then overlaps and snap shut with a nice positive click. Now this bracelet has been sized, but I didn't size it myself. I'm pleased to report that Pequignet sized it for me. This is something I really like about Pequignet. They size the bracelets specifically to fit the collector's wrist size. So when purchasing this watch, you can specify your wrist size, for example 16 centimeters, 18 centimeters, 20 centimeters, etc. And their watchmaker will make the bracelet to perfectly fit your wrist. So I told Pequignet I have a large 8-inch wrist, and their watchmaker made this bracelet to perfectly fit an 8-inch wrist, and I can just slide an index finger beneath the bracelet and clasp, so you can see it is the correct size for my 8-inch wrist. They have done a perfect job of making it symmetrical. The butterfly clasp sits dead centre of the wrist, so it's got an equal number of links both on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side. The clasp doesn't sit off centre. The correct sizing has been done. And again, this is something that one doesn't see with other mid-tier brands. At €4,000, you cannot specify the watchmaker to make the links in your watch the perfect fit for your wrist size. You can't order a watch and say, I have a 16 centimeter, 18 centimeter, or 20 centimeter wrist. Can you size the bracelet? You have to do it yourself. But with Pequignet, it's like a bespoke watch, like a tailor-made suit, which is made to fit your wrist specifically. And it's great because straight out of the box, you can put it on the wrist, and the first time it fits correctly, and you don't need to resize the bracelet yourself. So a real benefit of Pequignet watches. The spearhead bracelet on this is one of the most comfortable stainless steel bracelets I have ever experienced, and I have reviewed hundreds of watches on my channel, including high-tier pieces costing in excess of €10,000. This is the kind of comfort level and feel-good factor one experiences with a high-tier piece, and at €4,000 this is one of the best bracelets I have experienced. It articulates and flexes around the wrist perfectly, and as you can see, there is no gap whatsoever underneath the undercut of the case. The tips of the lugs have a very snug fit. Often with integrated lug pieces, they have a large gap underneath the tip of the lugs, and the watch sits on top of the wrist like a slab of 316L grade stainless steel. But this Concorde curves around the wrist, and despite having integrated links to the head of the piece, it actually articulates very well. The end link in the bracelet pulls very snug to the wrist. The taper is correct, with a 40mm head of the piece. For an integrated bracelet, 21.8 tapering down to 18.9. Now normally I would say a 21.8 to 18.9 is too wide and thick and not enough of a taper. I like a 20 to 16 taper with conventional bracelets. But with this spearhead bracelet, the links are very thin and low profile, and so therefore it's deceptive, because although it does look like visually a thick and heavy bracelet with a lot of heft, it's actually very lightweight. This watch is incredibly light at only 140 grams with all the links in the bracelet. Now bear in mind, it's a large bracelet to fit my 8-inch wrist, but it's still only 140 grams with a solid stainless steel head of the piece, exhibition case back, and stainless steel bezel. Just look at the way the brush satin finishing on the tops of the bezel contrasts with the mirror polishing to the edges of it. And again, that contrasts with the brushed satin finishing to the flank. So I like the different finishes which catch the light. And again, look at the spearhead bracelet. We've got brushed satin finishing to the main links, but the tips of the spearhead links are mirror polished. So it's lovely and shiny. So this could potentially be worn as a daily wear piece or a dress piece. 140 grams really is incredible for a 40mm piece. And the flat sapphire crystal is just very aesthetically pleasing because there's a slight edge to it which has a bevel. And when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle, the edge of the sapphire crystal, which projects slightly above the top of the bezel, catches the light. Just absolutely gorgeous. So feel-good factor of this watch is outstanding. Comfort level is outstanding. The thing I like about it above all else is how low profile it is. 9.5 really is exceptional, and Pequignet deserve credit because it is difficult to get a movement so thin with 65 hours of power reserve, and to get an automatic watch down to only 9.5mm, it really is incredible. It wouldn't be so impressive if they used a quartz movement or a manual wind movement, but with an automatic with a rotor, 9.5 really is high tier level. Absolutely gorgeous. I love the look of the integrated spearhead bracelet. Incredibly comfortable. Doesn't pull arm hairs, no sharp edges to it. Perfectly deburred and chamfered. And the charcoal grey dial is just gorgeous. The way it changes from black in low light conditions to a satin finish, anthracite colour. And the stick indices and the skeletonized handset catch the light beautifully. Fantastic piece. The feel-good factor is sublime. Right, so let's do a loom test and we'll see how the loom performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So skeletonized hands, and we've got stick indices. So the skeletonized hands don't allow for a large plot or a large area of superluminova to be applied, but nevertheless Pequignet have applied TC1 superluminova to the skeletonized hands to improve the legibility in the dark. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. This is clearly 5 to 6 layers of TC1 superluminova. It's got a blue tone to the TC1, which looks similar to BGW9, but brighter. It looks more white. C1 has a white tone to it, and TC1 in blue tone is a whiter version of BGW9 in terms of the exciter. The exciter of TC1 is more white colour, or lighter blue colour than BGW9. So one can clearly differentiate between the skeletonized hour hand and the skeletonized minute hand. The minute hand clearly looks longer and has more TC1 superluminova on it. So it's glowing incredibly brightly. Now, of course, this is a daily wear piece. We're not looking at a dive piece, so therefore one isn't going to get loom applied to the indices on a dress piece or a daily wear piece. That would be inappropriate. But they've made the correct decision because this is going to be used as a daily wear piece, and therefore it does benefit from having some loom on the handset in order to be able to read the time in the dark. It's practical. So I like the proportions of the skeletonized hands, and they do allow for enough area, enough plot for the tips to have 5 to 6 layers of TC1 applied. It's not going to fade whatsoever. This is clearly 5 to 6 layers, and the exciter is performing incredibly brightly. So again, they haven't cut any corners with regards to the quality of the TC1 superluminova they're using. At €4,000 in the mid-tier, this is the kind of performance one expects. So very legible, very good, very bright. Proportions of the handset are correct, and I like it. Right, so let's discuss the movement use because it is my favourite aspect of this piece. So, as I've detailed, Pequignet became a manufacturer in 2011, and that means that from 2011 onwards they began to manufacture their own calibers in-house rather than buying them in from movement manufacturers such as ETA and Sellita, for example. They deserve credit for this because it is expensive to produce calibers in France. They do it themselves, and this movement, the Calibre Initial, is their third in-house calibre produced. They produced the Calibre Initial from 2021 onwards, so it's had 3 years of service. There are no reliability or quality control issues reported whatsoever. It is a reliable, well-proven French calibre. So 65-hour power reserve is very impressive. It has 21 joules. It runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. It has hand winding and hacking, which is useful complications, and a quick set date complication, which I've demonstrated. And I really like it because it is also accurate. Pequignet regulate their caliber initial in 6 positions, which is the absolute limit. Often chronometer grade movements are regulated in 5 positions to meet COSC chronometer certification. They regulate their movements in 6 positions, which is the absolute maximum, to chronometer grade, which is -4 to +6 seconds per day. Now, often with 5-day or 65-hour movements, they sacrifice accuracy, because when you extend the power reserve of a movement, often you sacrifice accuracy. If you have a lower power reserve, you can refine the accuracy to chronometer grade. But this is both chronometer grade accurate and also 65-hour power reserve. So after regulation in 6 positions, this has an average accuracy of less than +2 seconds per day, which is just incredible. +2 seconds from a 65-hour caliber, which is French made, is just outstanding, and Pequignet deserve full credit for it. Just look at the finishing to the arabesque finishing and the pelage finishing, and the cutouts to the rotor, which is embossed with the Pequignet emblem. This is high tier level in-house caliber finishing. €10,000 price point finishing on a watch which only costs €4,000. Just incredible. A very slim movement, technically excellent, accurate, with a very high power reserve of 65 hours. They've made the correct decision by using a 4 Hz frequency rather than 3 Hz, because that gives a nice balance between power reserve and accuracy, and also a nice sweep of the second hand. It doesn't stutter or judder around the dial like a 3 Hz movement. So as you can see, the arabesque finishing on this watch is just incredible. I love the way the arabesque finishing catches the light. And also we've got pelage finishing as well. Just gorgeous. The movement is a work of art. It's just a delight to take this watch off wrist and just look at the movement. Fantastic. So the caliber initial is their 3rd movement, and I think it's one of their best. No negatives to it whatsoever. Accurate and high power reserve, and of course this is only 9.5mm thick because the movement is very low profile. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? When I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price points. This is unquestionably excellent quality and unquestionably excellent value at the €4,000 price point. I think Pequignet have actually undervalued this piece. It would still be excellent quality and excellent value at a €6,000 price point. I think they've undervalued it by €2,000 because it is a French-made watch with a French-made in-house caliber with 65 hours of power reserve. It is incredible specification. So €6,000 would be the correct price point for this piece. At $4,000, I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. I'm going to highly recommend it to you for consideration. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Pequignet Concorde. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.